Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
And I'm Eric.
and like twin brothers in Roman mythology, we are going to dive headlong into the latest installment of Alien. And you know what? We will know you saw that movie if that opening joke landed for you, because Alien Romulus draws its name from said mythology, which you didn't actually just have to know on your own because they make sure to tell you that and show you a plaque of it in the film. But I thought that was kind of fun. It is Alien Week. Alien Romulus not only exploding into theaters and aliens exploding out of people's chests, but it is exploding back into the cultural landscape. It has been 45 years since Ridley Scott gave us the original Alien. We've seen 6 Alien franchise films, plus I believe there's 2 Alien versus Predator. There might be 3.
There's 2.
It feels like more if you've had to sit through one. So it's been going strong over those 40 years, but it's fair to say kind of a unique return to form here with Alien Romulus, which comes from Fede Alvarez. Not the first franchise he's waded into. He remade Evil Dead, a very much more serious and violent take on Evil Dead. I actually did not care for that much, but I know a lot of people are fans of. Uh, but he dives in here, and this movie would literally, in terms of a time frame, be the one that most closely follows the events of the original Alien. It also very much ties back to that film in a lot of different ways. First of which is an introductory sequence in which we see the Wayland Corporation literally stumbling upon the wreckage of the Nostromo, which Ripley destroyed at the end of the original Alien, and recovering something, which is never a great idea, that they then proceed to open. We flash forward to a mining colony, which looks like a real tough hang, especially when it's revealed that it has 0 days of sunshine thanks to the pollution in the atmosphere. And we are introduced to Rain, played by Callie Spaney, who is desperate to get off that planet to a planet with some sunshine. She thinks she has qualified on her hours, and her parents have already died due to mining sickness. So she applies to get out and finds out that they have moved the goalpost. I'm sure that has never happened to any of us in our lives before, and that she might be stuck there with her brother, who turns out to be a replicant that has been reprogrammed to be her friend, played by David Johnson, who was really, I thought, great in this film. Was also great in a movie called Rye Lane, completely different tone, that came out last year. So if you missed that one's streaming on Hulu. They join up with a group of friends who say they've seen a ship that's roaming in orbit that has some cryopods, and they have their own ship that can get them to a planet. They just have a real simple task. They need her synthetic to get up there and be able to get into the ship. And they're just going to pick up these pods and be on their way. But as anyone who's seen a film like this, or really any film in the history of time, knows, nothing is ever that easy. What they end up docking to is a defunct station owned by Wayland that immediately shows signs of distress. And it isn't long before they stumble upon some aliens and a synthetic that is badly damaged that looks an awful lot like Ian Holm from the original Alien, which is kind of a fun nod to the original. And then it becomes a kind of journey to see if they can escape. And I will say, what I enjoyed most about this is I really like the performances of Spaney and David Johnson. David Johnson in particular gets to go through a couple of interesting things on his character journey that really change his interactions, his speech, his whole performance. And I thought he handled those really well, and that made it really engaging. And I really like the style. Fede Alvarez has some incredible shots in this, but this one very much feels of a piece to the original Alien in terms of kind of that horror and dread tone, that very it has some shots that look very much kind of in that style, which was late 70s, early 80s. has very much for me that kind of a tone. I'm giving this a strong thumbs up. I really enjoyed this one, as we'll get to when we talk about Alien franchise rankings, but I was pleasantly surprised.
I thought there were solid performances, spectacular set design, framing of monsters, like you mentioned. Fede Alvarez knows where to put the camera and knows how to pull some things off. I thought some of the highlights were the gravity drop sequence and the third act, like finale. Um, I This is the third time we've essentially gotten white brunette lady goes with team, then have to escape, uh, and then she ends up alone on the third act. Well, not entirely alone, sometimes alone, sometimes with a robot, and has to blow a monster in, escape in an escape pod, out the airlock, what have you. It's familiar, but I think that's where I'm just a huge fan of Fede Alvarez, from Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. He is so competent and so effective at making a movie that I feel like the initial viewing of his movies is kind of like, I mean, I guess Don't Breathe would have been a surprise to people because there are twists and turns in that movie. But I'll put it this way. There's an author who suggested that no sequel could have an impact of the same impact as the first two Alien movies, because you've answered the mystery that surrounds the alien nature of things. If you go into theaters to watch Alien the first time, you know there's an alien, but you don't have any idea how it works. You don't have any idea of how any of this stuff is going to roll out. Everything is like this horrifying unfolding mystery of something that's like not understood. But the movie came out when it came out, and having seen it so many years afterwards, I already know the movie when I go into the movie. And that's kind of how I feel about Alien Romulus, is I already know the movie when I go into the movie. So my question is it going to surprise me? Is it going to uh, do things effectively and in a way that feels like it has weight and grip and consequence? And this does. I give it a strong thumbs up. I feel like over time, this movie will stand next to Alien and Aliens and other installments in the franchise, and it will be looked on more favorably because as the other movies are watched and rewatched and things aren't new in them, what's left to compare them is the quality and competence of the ride and the filmmaking and what you put together there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this was an interesting situation for me because I had remarked to another friend of ours when we were going in. I have not actually enjoyed Fede Alvarez's films. You know, you mentioned Don't Breathe and Evil Dead. I know a lot of people liked those. I didn't really care for either of those, so I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this one, but a lot of that really worked for me. Um, it looks like we have a comment that really worked for some others. The Kegi says the film looks great, especially the aliens, but the script and the dialogue at times is bad. I I don't know if I don't know if these are the kind of movies I necessarily go into for totally for dialogue, but I there is only to me two characters that ever really got developed, and
Yeah.
one of them was supposed to be a robot character. Um, they're they introduce a couple of things that don't get followed through on, so you could almost say the same thing though too about the original Alien. Ripley's character gets developed. I don't know how much of the other ones get necessarily totally developed other than Ian Holmes' character, because we figure out they're surprised that he's a synthetic. And but a lot of those, you have some great actors. I mean, Tom Skerritt is a great actor. You see him only a few times in there. You don't get a whole lot. Yaphet Kotto, I remember's in there. There's I'm going to forget some. They have a pretty great cast, and you don't you don't necessarily get to know all of them either. I would agree that there's a little bit of underdevelopment of some of the other group. Like it wasn't hard to guess who was going to go first. The one that I couldn't even have picked her name out of a lineup. I'm like, yep, she's not long for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kegi points out, yeah, get your hands off her. And then I like that performance of that person being very timid to finish the line. That does feel to me a little bit like this is a person who knows what he's supposed to say. But whatever. There's a certain point where, it's all about aliens in space and it's make believe and whatnot. And it's very easy for me to. The only thing for me about this movie that stood out weird was in going through all the work to de-age Ian Holmes' face onto the robot that didn't have to be him, didn't have to be that model. Like I feel like there's supposed to be more significance to that, and like for me it just didn't work because then you have in
Well,
the
I mean,
highly practical effects
that's
heavy
the Disney
movie.
of it all. Disney
Yeah.
having bought them, Disney loves that technology. They used it in Indiana Jones. They used it in Star Wars. There isn't a place where they don't want to de-age somebody. Them and Martin Scorsese holding hands, using the de-aging to bring back stars. I kind of liked that nod to the original. I guess I didn't realize when it first started that he was going to have such a big role. I thought that was just going to be like a quick, but it ends up having kind of a big role. I guess the suggestion would be that model of synthetic, they all looked the same and had the same kind of role, which is interesting. But I enjoy a few of the Alien films. I wouldn't say it's my favorite franchise though. There are movies that I like, which we'll talk about. Um, people have mentioned you don't really get that invested in the characters, so the deaths don't hit that hard. I guess that's fair. You're watching, I guess, some for the suspense. I don't remember being like emotionally devastated by the deaths in a lot of the deaths in the original either. You're kind of bought into one central character's attempt to work things out and survive. And that's in that way, this one's built similarly. She's trying to pull along a couple of other people during the film, but you're mostly kind of invested in Rain's journey.
They do a little bit of something that I think to me there's enough with the character's name is Bjorn. He's played by Spike Fearn. They talk about his character's parents being left behind by calculation by one of the. I kind of like that you call them replicants because of the link between Blade Runner and this universe. So I'm just going to call them replicants.
I knew I was looking for a word, and
that moment of Andy refusing to open the door for the character that's pregnant.
Yeah. As Bellomer said.
That didn't. I mean, I don't want to. That didn't turn out to be death, but I feel like you could definitely feel the weight of the decisions, and you could definitely feel the danger of Andy not being the same Andy as a consequence of understanding the characters' relationships to one another. I feel like there is something there. It's not there. I can understand wanting to maybe spend more time with them and care about them and see them react to what's going on. I think maybe the things with aliens moved too quickly. Like the gestation of the alien came very quickly. Any alien that's born, it becomes a big alien like very quickly. And there are a lot of them. Like there are face huggers all over the ship. I didn't see a queen, but I'm sure there had to be one on the ship because that's supposedly how they get all the face huggers. So I just feel like they cared the most about
it was almost
sticking to one or two
suggested that
characters
in
and
the
telling
lab
their
they
story
were
effectively.
creating them.
It did. I felt like they were. Yeah.
That's what that ship was like a place where they were trying to create, and it backfired on them, as it so often does. Well, let's leave Romulus behind and talk about the franchise as a whole, I mentioned there are 6 that I think we would consider part of really the Alien franchise. I'm not going to count the Alien versus Predator spinoff here, but you have the original Alien, which was 1979, Aliens, which came out in 1986, Alien 3, which was actually directed by David Fincher. God bless his soul. Alien Resurrection, which featured Winona Ryder for no apparent reason. And then in the mid 2000s, you got kind of a little bit of a reboot as Ridley Scott came back for Prometheus, which was actually co-written by Damon Lindelof, and I think you can see the that influence in that film, and then a subsequent follow-off that carried on with Michael Fassbender, Alien Covenant, which was the last of those movies. So, Eric, I'll let you go first. What is your ranking for them? And if you want to just give the 6 and then tell me where you're thinking of slotting Romulus, that's great too.
Okay, so number 1 is Alien. I saw it when I was an adult. I'm glad I did, because if I was a child, I don't think I would have appreciated it. I feel like the pacing would have gotten to me and things like that. Number 2 for me is going to have to be Aliens, even though it gives me what I call for myself the James Cameron glaze. When I'm watching it, it feels like an action movie that just action is happening. I don't for some reason I don't get sucked in. Terminator 2 and Terminator 1 and I'm sure another movie by his, like I've been sucked into and very, engrossed in, but like I don't know. The next movie on my list would have to be Prometheus, despite what everyone talks about with the stupidity with the characters. Yes, running in a straight line against a rolling object is a horrendous thing to see, but
what about running in a straight line only to get shot by an arrow?
Well, anyways,
that's befallen a Stark before.
After that, I'm going to put Alien 3, the assembly cut, which is the only version of the movie, it turns out, that I have seen. And then I am going to put Alien 4 Resurrection, and I'm going to put Alien Covenant as the last and worst, partially because I like Prometheus so much that movie destroys any hyper expectations I had, which funny enough, Alien Romulus pays off more to me than Alien Covenant. There's a bit of a suggestion of what Peter Weyland wanted and a little bit of a tie back to like the entire point of the expedition from the beginning and what David is doing. Like it's just a little bit, but yeah, while technically there are worse movies maybe than Alien Covenant, it's at the bottom of the list for me. But Alien Romulus, as effective as it was, despite there not being like too much like new twist or turny wise, would have to go right next to maybe even for me personally above Aliens. It might be my second favorite in the franchise.
So I guess I didn't know there was a different cut of Alien 3, and I don't know how you would know if that's the one you'd seen.
So the alien comes out of an ox, not a dog. So point 1, they don't kill the dog. There's 30 minutes longer devoted to most of the characters in the prison. So there's a lot more Charles S. Dutton, and there's a lot more of like why they're making the decisions they're making, and a little bit more of them evaluating, yeah, we're prisoners. What does that say about us? What is humanity? This and that. The ending of the movie, usually I know, sorry, you love Aliens because I'm not a big James Cameron person. Whatever. The very end of the movie, you know which version you've seen because when Sigourney Weaver does her sacrifice, when she falls in the theatrical cut, a chest burster pops out of her chest at the last moment to like give you confirmation that she was going to do that. That does not happen in the alternate version. And then there's this subplot about a character freeing the alien when they imprison him. There's a quite a bit. It does not by any means turn it into like a good movie versus bad movie. Like, but it's just I mean, I would have to see the theatrical cut of Alien 3 to know exactly how different they are, but I know this was the version that is supposed to be closer to notes. It's not a director's cut. David Fincher hates that movie in every version and will swear up and down. He said that they could make the assembly cut as long as they don't call it a director's cut. He is like completely, pushed himself away. But I don't know. I think it's worth looking at.
I'm pretty sure I've only seen the theatrical version because the three things that you're talking about were definitely not present. And it's weird. Most films that have like a different version or stuff, you can look it up, and it'll. I was trying to look up to see the assembly cut of streaming. I wonder if it's just like a DVD release. Is that how you saw it on DVD?
Yes, but I don't own it.
Yeah. So, but I wonder if that was just. We'll have to look into that. I don't know. But I'm very much with David Fincher. I like David Fincher as a filmmaker. I've enjoyed a number of his films quite a lot. I will give mine in reverse order, and I will just start out by saying I abhor Alien 3 with a passion. That is way at the bottom of the barrel for me. Do not like it at all. Much like David Fincher, I would probably like to forget I ever saw it. I recently rewatched. We were getting ready for this, and I'm like, this is why I don't watch this more often. I did not care for it. Not much above that is Resurrection to me, which I also think is dumb. And the Winona Ryder. I don't know. The Winona Ryder of it all doesn't totally work. An actress I like, fine. I don't know what's going on in that movie or why they thought it was a good idea. It doesn't feel like a good idea when you're watching it. A little notch above that is Covenant. I did not really care for Covenant either, which was a shame because I actually did kind of enjoy. So those three I don't really even like, or not even really. I don't like them. Those are three movies that I did not care for. Next up for me would be Prometheus. And, Prometheus is definitely not perfect. There are some flaws, but I kind of like Damon Lindelof and his approach to storytelling and to ideas, even when it doesn't always pan out, like some of the last seasons of Lost or some of the other projects that he's worked on. So I like that one well enough that I own it. I don't love it, but there are three Alien movies that I own, and that would be one of them. Next up for me would be Aliens, and I'm always fascinated by the Alien versus Aliens discussion because it feels like there are camps, and I don't feel as strongly like that I greatly prefer one to another. I think from a stylistic standpoint, there's one that I like better than the other, but I think they're both fine films. They're different approaches to material. I do think that some of the way that they built the characters in the story, especially for Newt and Michael Biehn, is another reason why I hate Alien 3, because right at the beginning, you're like, okay, what gives? But the action is good. James Cameron has a very different approach in terms of building characters and a tone. I would say there's lighter is maybe not the right word, but there is more humor, intentional and unintentional humor in that. It just feels a little bit different, and I think it's a fun ride. After that is where I would actually put Romulus, because in terms of the alien, the reason I prefer Alien to Aliens is probably because of that tone and because of the more somber horror elements. And I feel that is something it shares a kinship with for Romulus. So really for me, I like all three of those films. If you looked at my letterbox, I scored them the same, but preferential for me would be Alien, Romulus, Aliens. Then Prometheus a little bit below that, and then a gulf the size of the Grand Canyon and the rest of the films. And if you wanted to throw the Alien versus Predator, they'd be down in the bottom of the Grand Canyon too, because I did not care that much for those films either.
First one I'm on. It's a summer blockbuster. I saw it when I was a teenager. Like,
I'm not really big on the Predator movies in
oh,
general at all.
okay.
So the part of the Alien movies I care about the least, which is the non-human creatures.
Yeah.
Combined with creatures from another movie I don't care about, combined with Paul W.S. Anderson, they either work or they 100% do not work. And that's how I feel about his Resident Evil movies too. There are a couple of them where it works fine for me, and there are a couple where I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Or Event Horizon. Event Horizon
Alien
movie I detest with all of
Oh, you don't like that?
No.
That's like one of the only two good movies by that guy to me.
Yep. So, but Disney owns them, so they will continue to make Alien and Alien versus Predator. Well, they are.
Comments.
They've already started making Predator again. That's with the movie Prey.
Prey.
Even though they didn't
now Disney
that way,
owns
and you
both.
didn't know what it was going to be. Well, they own 20th Century Fox. It makes sense that they're continuing some of these franchises, and people obviously still have a passion for it. 108 million this weekend. Romulus did very well.
Yeah.
And has continued to be on a roll. But that is our take on this new movie and this franchise. We both enjoyed Alien Romulus for what it is. To go out and check those out. And if you're a big fan of Alien films, I think that you will appreciate this one. And because Disney owns all the Alien films, they are actually all pretty readily available to stream on both Disney Plus if you just want to amuse yourself by watching Alien on the Disney platform, or on Hulu, which Disney also owns. But that is one nice thing. All of them are readily available. There is actually one of them, it might be number 2, Aliens, that is on HBO Max for some reason. But when I was going through, it was not hard to find the Alien films to kind of do a binge watch. I did a couple of weeks ago. Catching back up. So good time if you were an Alien fan. You know what? It is also a good time if you were an early 90s emo goth comic fan, because next week we have 30 years later a remake of one of Eric's favorite films, The Crow, and he is both too excited for words and too nervous to even make it through the week. But
I can use my special sick growly voice to say no.
So we will be taking a look at The Crow, and both versions of The Crow, the OG Crow from 1994 with Brandon Lee, and the 2024 Crow with Pennywise.
And maybe we'll blink twice at them.
Yeah, and when we mentioned August, the big month for horror movies, none bigger than next weekend, where all the predominant releases are horror films. You have The Crow, you have Blink Twice, and you have Strange Darlings. So we may get to more than one. We are for sure going to dive deep into The Crow. But that'll do it for us this week. So avoid one of the face suckers. If you see it coming your way, just run away. If anybody tells you they just need to make a quick trip to a defunct mining vessel and then you're going to get to go to paradise, do not believe them. Won't be a quick, uneventful trip. Those are two of the primary takeaways from Alien Romulus. But hope you guys have a wonderful week. We will look forward to seeing you back here next Sunday. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.